Have you ever opened your bank app and felt confused instead of relieved? You know you got paid, you didn't buy anything crazy, no vacation, no big purchase, and yet the number's lower than it should be, not empty, just quietly disappointing. That's because money usually doesn't disappear from one bad decision. It disappears through normal ones. A swipe here, a subscription there, a quick I deserve this after a long day. Nothing that feels dangerous, nothing that sets off alarms until it's too late. But month after month, those small decisions leak money quietly and keep you wondering why saving feels impossible. If you've ever thought, I make more now, so why does it still feel tight? This video is going to explain exactly where your money's really going and why you never feel it happening. All right, quick intro. I'm Ricky, and I think way too much about how money sneaks out of your life without you even noticing. Not the boring textbook stuff, not some grind harder motivational hype. I'm talking real life, the messy, everyday cash leaks. If you hustle, make decent dough, but still wonder where it all went by the end of the month, you're in the right spot. Here, we break down personal finance like it actually happens. Quiet habits, sneaky subscriptions, tiny decisions that feel chill but drain your wallet over time. No flexing, no guilt trips, just real talk and smarter moves. Hit subscribe if you're trying to actually see your money. Let's get into it. It's the middle of the month and you check your account. Again, that familiar tight feeling rises in your chest. You know you got paid, you didn't overspend, you didn't go on a wild vacation or splurge on anything dramatic, and yet the number's lower than it should be. You pause, scrolling through transactions. Did I overspend or did I just miss something? The questions aren't loud, but they're persistent. A quiet frustration creeps in. How you tell yourself, I'm doing everything right. I just need to tighten up. For a moment, everything feels manageable. Bills are paid, rent is covered, and you skip the expensive habits. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, tension builds. Every coffee you grabbed, every small convenience purchase, every auto renewal you forgot to cancel starts adding up in your mind. It's not shocking, not painful, just quietly heavy. You start blaming yourself. I must be bad with money. I don't have discipline. Why can't I stick to a budget? The truth is, you're not. You're just playing by rules you didn't choose, in a system designed to quietly take without asking. Most people never see this. They think their struggles come from one big mistake, a shopping spree, a wrong purchase. But the real problem is subtle. It's the small, repeated decisions, the defaults you didn't question, the micro rewards that feel justified after long days. They don't hurt enough to notice, but they hurt enough to prevent real progress. And the weirdest part, when your income goes up, nothing changes. You get a raise, maybe a bonus, and for a brief moment, it feels better. But then your lifestyle silently adjusts. A slightly bigger apartment, a faster phone plan, a few extra conveniences. The raise disappears almost as quietly as it came. This is when fatigue kicks in. Tracking every dollar feels exhausting. You stop checking your balance as often. You avoid looking too closely because it stresses you out. You tell yourself you'll deal with it later. And in that later, money keeps slipping away without a sound. Here's what most people don't realize. The problem isn't willpower. It's awareness. If you don't notice these leaks, no amount of discipline or effort will fix the cycle. You're not lazy or careless. You're just human, trying to navigate a financial system built to move fast and quietly. By the end of the month, the pattern repeats. You wonder why saving feels impossible. You feel behind even when your income rises, and unless you spot these invisible drains, nothing changes. Not your bank account, not your confidence, not your peace of mind. And until you see it clearly, all the budgeting tricks in the world won't help. That's what we're going to do next. Break down exactly how money quietly disappears every month and how to start noticing it before it's gone. You think money problems come from bad choices, overspending, impulse buying, a lack of self-control. That's what most people believe. It sounds logical, responsible even. But here's the thing, it's incomplete. It's so you think you're careful with money. You track expenses, you skip big splurges, and yet, somehow, the balance keeps shrinking. Why? Most of your biggest leaks aren't the decisions you notice, they're the ones you barely register. Small amounts, repeated quietly, consistently. That's where the real problem hides. Psychologists call this habituation. Basically, your brain stops noticing what becomes familiar. The first time you pay for something, you notice it. The fifth time, it barely registers. By the 20th time, it feels invisible. That's why convenience, subscriptions, and small upgrades rarely trigger alarms. Comfort becomes dangerous. Here's what most people don't see. These quiet drains aren't mistakes, they're defaults. Auto renewals, upgrades you barely think about, tiny charges that add up. And because nothing feels wrong in the moment, nothing changes. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The solution isn't more discipline. Discipline eventually runs out. Awareness compounds. Once you spot these quiet leaks, your old money rules no longer apply. You don't need guilt. You don't need extreme effort. You just need to notice. And here's the subtle pattern most people miss. Recurring charges stay because they remove friction. Paying attention, canceling, choosing differently, all of that requires effort. Your brain avoids friction. So, unless something hurts enough to notice, it continues automatically. I know what you're thinking. Okay, show me what to cut. We'll get there, but first you need to understand the pattern because cutting without awareness is like trying to fix a leak you can't see. This is the shift. Discipline alone doesn't solve the problem. Trying harder doesn't work. But noticing the small, quiet, invisible flows of money changes everything. Once you see it, you gain control. And control compounds faster than any budget ever will. So before we dive into the exact things quietly draining your money every month, remember this. Your biggest financial leaks aren't flashy or dramatic. They're invisible. They're normal. And the moment you bring them into awareness, they start losing power. Money rarely disappears in dramatic, obvious ways. It doesn't explode out of your account in one big moment. It leaks. And the leaks don't come from reckless spending or huge mistakes. They come from small decisions that feel harmless, the kinds of choices you barely notice, the ones that slip under your awareness. Because the most expensive systems in your life are often the ones that feel convenient, automatic, and no big deal. Take subscriptions. They don't ask you to decide every month. They ask you to decide once. And after that, they live quietly in the background. No friction, no emotional resistance, no sense of loss when the money leaves because you're not actively spending it. One day you check your bank app and the balance is lower. But here's the uncomfortable part. You don't remember buying anything meaningful. You don't feel happier. Your life doesn't feel better, yet the money is gone anyway. That's the moment most people don't like to look at because it forces a realization. You're not losing money because of big choices. You're losing it because of invisible ones. Think about something as small as a $4.99 subscription you forgot about. Maybe it was a free trial for a design tool you planned to test once. You never opened it again, but it kept renewing, month after month, quietly draining money from a life it no longer belongs to. Individually, it feels insignificant, but systems like that don't operate in isolation. They stack, they overlap, they compound. And over time, what drains your money isn't one mistake. It's a pattern of tiny, low-effort transactions that slowly reshape your financial baseline. They're easy to approve, but hard to notice. They don't feel like spending, so they never trigger caution, which is exactly why they're so powerful. Most people imagine financial danger as something loud, a big impulse purchase, a bad investment, a major lifestyle upgrade. But more often, the real danger is quiet. It's the absence of awareness, the gradual slide, the feeling that nothing changed, and yet somehow everything feels tighter. Money doesn't vanish dramatically. It dissolves inside systems you stopped paying attention to. And the first step to changing that isn't cutting everything out. It's learning to see where the leaks actually are. If the first layer of quiet money erosion is convenience and automation, the second layer goes deeper. It isn't about what you're spending on. It's about who you believe you are when you spend. Because a lot of spending doesn't come from desire or need or impulse. It comes from identity. You don't just pay for products or services. You pay for the version of yourself you want to believe in. The productive person keeps the software subscription, even if they haven't opened it in 6 months. The healthy person keeps the gym membership, even though they're too exhausted to go. The future focused person keeps paying for the online course they never started, not because they're learning from it, but because canceling feels like admitting they won't. You're not paying for the thing, you're paying for the story. And that's why identity spending is hard to see. Because deep down, it isn't about money, it's about self image. You keep paying even when you're not using it. Because canceling doesn't feel like canceling a subscription. It feels like canceling the version of you that might still get it together someday. So you tell yourself, I'll start next month. I'll get back to it soon. I just need to fix my routine first. And the payment goes through again. No guilt spike, no decision moment. Just quiet continuation, month after month, not wasted, absorbed. And here's the part that hurts a little. You don't notice the emotional cost either, because every renewal doesn't just take a little money, it takes a little belief, a tiny reminder that you're not there yet. And over time, that belief compounds in the wrong direction, not financially, psychologically. Then there's optimism spending. This one is subtle and expensive. It doesn't come from indulgence, it comes from hope. You spend for the person you believe you're about to become, the version of you who will wake up earlier, who will finally use the tool, who will live the lifestyle the purchase belongs to. Optimism is powerful, but optimism is also expensive because when the habit doesn't change, The purchase remains, but the identity never arrives. You didn't buy the item for today. You bought it for the future version of you that hasn't shown up yet. And optimism keeps renewing itself. I'll do better next month. I'll actually use it this time. This is the version of me I want to move toward. And the spending continues, not because it makes sense, but because it feels hopeful. Hope doesn't feel like a financial leak, but it can quietly become one. Now add another layer, lifestyle absorption. Not lifestyle creep, because it doesn't feel like rising. It feels like settling into something new and then forgetting you ever upgraded at all. You get a raise. For a moment, it feels meaningful, and then little by little, your standards shift, your defaults change, your tolerance adjusts. You don't consciously upgrade. You just stop noticing what used to feel optional. A slightly nicer lunch becomes normal. Ride sharing replaces public transport. The occasional treat becomes a weekly routine. Nothing dramatic, nothing outrageous, just gradual absorption into the everyday. And by the end of the year, most of the raise is gone. Not wasted, just quietly absorbed into the new normal. And somehow, you're earning more than ever, but still feel broke. That's the snap moment most people avoid confronting, because it doesn't feel like failure. It feels like drifting forward without actually moving. The numbers changed, but the experience didn't. Underneath all of this is something even more fundamental: cognitive overload. When life is heavy, your brain doesn't evaluate choices, it stops comparing, stops questioning, stops pausing. It does something far simpler. It accepts whatever is already happening, not because you're careless, but because you're tired. You're not consciously choosing the recurring costs, the small fees, the repeated renewals. You just don't have enough bandwidth to challenge them. So they continue, they repeat, they stabilize. And the longer something stays in place, the more legitimate it feels. Not because it's useful, but because it's familiar. And familiarity is powerful. It's easier to keep something that may no longer make sense than to confront the discomfort of asking whether it still belongs in your life. So you carry it forward, silently, automatically, month after month, not out of intention, but out of exhaustion. Then there's something smaller, but just as real: micro emotional spending. Not splurges, not luxury, not reward, just quiet coping. The little comforts at the end of a draining day, the tiny "I deserve this" purchases, not because you're irresponsible, but because in that moment it feels like relief. And relief repeated enough times becomes a habit. Habits repeated enough times become normal, and normal repeated enough times becomes invisible. And invisible, over time, becomes expensive, not because any single choice is wrong, but because repetition turns relief into a bill. None of these behaviors feel reckless. Most of them don't even feel like spending. They feel like continuity, identity, hope, stability, relief, but together. They form a system that slowly tightens around your finances without ever feeling like a conscious decision. And that's why people say, I don't know where my money goes. Because in a way, they're right. They never felt themselves spend it. Not in one moment, not in one mistake, just through patterns that blended into the background of everyday life. And in the next section, we're going to step out of theory and into reality: real numbers, real scenarios, real habits most people don't like to look at. And when you see them, it may feel uncomfortably familiar, but that discomfort, and if it does, that means you're finally seeing the pattern. Because awareness isn't punishment, it's the beginning of control. Let's bring this to life, because understanding behavior is one thing. Seeing it in real life is what makes it stick. Take Mark. He gets a raise. Modest, nothing dramatic, but it feels like a chance to upgrade his routine. He buys slightly nicer groceries, chooses delivery instead of cooking, occasionally orders lunch out instead of bringing it. Nothing extravagant, nothing reckless. At first it feels fine, normal, responsible. By the end of the year, most of the raise is gone, not wasted, absorbed. He didn't feel richer. He just felt like the same old version of himself, now living a quietly pricier routine. This is lifestyle absorption. Money doesn't vanish because he made a mistake. It vanishes because small, invisible shifts in daily life quietly raise the baseline of spending. Now, Sarah, she works long hours, stressed, exhausted. Life feels relentless. She doesn't splurge. She doesn't chase trends. She buys a cup of coffee or a small online item. Nothing big. But here's the truth. She didn't buy coffee. She bought relief from a life that never slowed down. And the math adds up. By the end of the month, she's out nearly $250, almost without noticing. Emotional spending, small purchases to ease stress repeated enough to silently accumulate. Individually negligible, collectively meaningful. Then Jason. Jason signed up for an online course months ago. He never logs in, doesn't use it, doesn't even open the modules. But he keeps paying, not for progress, not for knowledge. He keeps paying for the small comfort of believing he might finally become that version of himself. This is identity spending. Emotionally potent, invisible, and persistent. It's money leaving not for tangible benefits, but for self-image and hope. And finally, small frictionless upgrades that sneak in everywhere. Autopay subscriptions, tiny service fees, low impact conveniences. Separately, they feel harmless. Together, they shape your sense of normalcy. Your brain stops evaluating. Tiredness makes defaults feel acceptable. Familiarity feels like necessity. And before you notice, these quiet drains have redefined your daily spending landscape. And if we're honest, most of us don't see these as decisions. We see them as background noise. Here's the point. These aren't exceptions, not outliers, not mistakes. They're everyday life. The coffee that feels like comfort, the software you never use but keep paying for, the lunch upgrade that seems reasonable, the subscription that quietly renews. Add them together, multiply across months, and suddenly, your financial picture feels tighter than it should, even though no single choice was wrong. And here's a pause to reflect. Mark, Sarah, Jason, these aren't just stories, they're mirrors. And seeing them clearly makes it impossible to ignore the truth. Same choices, same money, but noticing the patterns before they accumulate gives you control. Real people, real numbers, real situations. And when you recognize yourself in these examples, it will feel uncomfortably familiar, but that discomfort, that's not failure. That's insight, because awareness is where change begins. Once you see the invisible systems, the quiet habits, and the identity-driven spending, stopping the leaks doesn't feel impossible. It feels inevitable. Pause for a second. Look, I know you're nodding along. You get it. You've been listening, thinking, yeah, that's exactly me. And yet, something in you probably feels like this is just how life is now. Here's the thing. Most advice never tells you. Your financial life is shaped by what happens when you're not paying attention, the subscription you forgot to cancel, the coffee upgrade you click without thinking, the software renewal that silently drains your account. Individually, none of them hurts. Together, they quietly determine your financial future. Someone could predict your next month's balance with uncomfortable accuracy just by observing your habits. Now, I'm not saying you need to change who you are or go extreme or track every dollar forever. Instead, imagine interrupting autopilot just once, not by overhauling your entire life, but by pausing to ask, is this still intentional? That tiny pause is enough. One small intervention can shift the trajectory. It's not magic, it's awareness in action. And when you do it enough, even just a few times, managing money stops feeling like something that happens to you. It starts feeling like something you participate in again, like you're back in the driver's seat of your finances. This is the bridge to the next layer. It's not about short-term cuts or quick fixes. It's about understanding patterns, habits, and identity. The long-term mindset that changes how your money behaves before it even leaves your hands. Not budgeting, not hustling, not cutting every small joy. Here's the thing most people miss. It's not about dramatic moves. It's about the quiet, consistent decisions that shape your life over time. Most people overvalue big gestures, thinking one huge cut, one massive saving spree, or one extreme hack will fix everything. And sure, those things help, briefly. But the long-term game? It's systems, not heroics. Look at your daily environment. Every convenience, every subscription, every autopilot payment, they're small, but they accumulate. That's friction in action. Some friction helps, some works against you. The secret is to make good decisions easier and bad decisions harder. For example, imagine you have 20 recurring charges. Most go unnoticed. Automatic payments, trials you forgot to cancel, low friction upgrades. Now, compare that to someone with 6 recurring charges. The fewer choices, the cleaner the system, the less your defaults drag you down. Easy to spend, hard to save. That's the reality. And here's the kicker. Your future self pays for your current defaults. Every tiny autopay, every invisible fee, every habit that feels normal compounds. Over months and years, it either builds wealth quietly or erodes it silently. So what's the solution? Not willpower, not forcing yourself to track every dollar forever. You can't rely on discipline alone. It eventually fatigues. You rely on system design. Arrange your environment so good behaviors require minimal thought, introduce friction for bad habits, automate savings, cancel unnecessary subscriptions, make the default the choice that aligns with your goals, and awareness compounds too. Once you spot a quiet leak, you rarely go back. One micro intervention, pausing autopilot, questioning a routine payment, doesn't just fix that moment, it trains your mind to notice patterns. Awareness becomes your long-term advantage. This is why the long-term mindset beats short-term cuts, because life isn't a sprint of perfect choices, it's a marathon of systems that work for you, not against you. The final insight: simplify, reduce unnecessary decisions, align your environment with your priorities, build automatic habits that favor your future self, then let time do the heavy lifting. People don't realize this is quieter, easier, and more sustainable than any one-off effort. You don't need to change who you are. You need to design the system around you, because when your systems work, you don't just survive, you progress, you build, you gain control without feeling like you're constantly sacrificing. And that's the mindset that changes how money behaves before it even leaves your hands. Let's take a step back, not because you've been careless, not because you've made one big mistake, not because you lack discipline. It's because your money quietly slips through invisible systems. The dinners out that feel small, the subscriptions you forgot you even had, the minor upgrades and automatic renewals, the little purchases that seem harmless, together they add up, slowly, invisibly, consistently. We talked about identity spending, keeping things you don't use because canceling feels like quitting on yourself. Lifestyle creep. Your raise is absorbed by new unnoticed expenses, micro emotional spending, the tiny rewards you give yourself when life feels exhausting. All of these aren't failures. They're human behaviors. They're patterns that have developed quietly, and they operate automatically unless you notice them. Here's the key insight: spending isn't the problem. Automatic spending without intention is, and this is where control comes in. When you pause autopilot, when you question defaults, when you reduce unnecessary friction and align your environment with your priorities, that's when real change happens. Your money starts to feel quieter, your decisions start to feel clearer, and your future more manageable, step by step. Think about it like this: same income, same opportunities. The difference is whether you let invisible systems run the show or whether you design them to support you. Not through guilt, not through cutting every small joy. Just awareness, just design, just small intentional interventions that accumulate over time. And remember, awareness compounds. Once you notice the patterns, you rarely go back. Every intentional choice creates momentum. Every small adjustment gives clarity to everything we've covered. Noticing the invisible, acting with intention, and letting time and systems work quietly in your favor. Before you go, I want you to do one simple thing. Not right now, later today. Open your bank app. Not to judge yourself, not to feel bad, just to notice. Scroll through your recent charges and look for anything that feels automatic, anything you didn't actively choose this month, anything that's still there just because it's always been there. You don't have to cancel everything. You don't have to make a big move. Even removing one quiet leak is a win, because awareness compounds. The more often you notice, the more control becomes effortless. And that's what this channel is really about. Not perfection, not discipline, design. If this video helped you see your money a little differently, consider subscribing. That's what we do here. We slow things down and make money feel manageable again. No pressure, just clarity, one decision at a time. I'll see you in the next one.